What's going on, Chooms? JonJonTheWise here, and I got another Cyberpunk video for you guys. Today I want to talk to you guys about Combat Zone, the new Skirmish game by Monster Fight Club. And you might be saying, new, John? That's something that we talked about 3 years ago. Yes, it was a Kickstarter. It finally released. Everybody got their game. I got my hands on it. I've been painting it, reading it, playing it. I wanted to give you guys my insight on the game just in case you might be interested. It is something I will be making content on in my channel, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But first, of course, let's talk about the Discord community. The link is in the description below. Join our community. It's a Cyberpunk community just waiting for you. Follow me on social media at JonJonTheWise, everywhere there is social media. And of course, subscribe to Tabletop Cyberpunk, my podcast. And if you want to buy some really cool dice, go to D10s by ENIFAEL. There's a link in the description. You guys can grab some really cool D10s, and a little bit of that sale will go to me. And if you just want to support, patreon.com/JonJonTheWise is the best way to support my channel. Thank you to all my patrons out there. So let's talk about what Combat Zone is. Combat Zone is a skirmish game, which means that it is a low model count game. You and your buddy, you paint, you collect, and have a bunch of minis that are part of your faction, and you go to war with each other. These battles are happening in like a combat zone area, an urban area, so there's gangs that are involved. These factions are called gangs, and the gangs range from zoners, bozos, to NCPD, trauma team, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Each gang has their own flavor in the way that they play. They have their own models, and it's really easy to keep up with because there aren't a lot of models in each faction as compared to other war games. Each model in your army may move, shoot, or do some other kinds of actions like net running, looting gear, opening a door, pushing a piece of terrain. There's all kinds of cool creative things that you can do within the game and your models. There is a way to win or lose every match. They're almost always the same. It's almost always kill half of the enemy team. But then there are these side objectives that we'll get into, and those are faction specific objectives that come with each one of your gangs. As I said before, it's a low model count game. That means you're going to have 5 to 10 models at most, depending what kind of game you're playing at what level. I recommend that you start with a small group and then you escalate to more and more as your campaign goes on, because campaign play is my favorite play, but I'm jumping the gun right here. I'll talk to you guys about campaign play down the road. It is alternating turns, which means that I go and then you go and then I go between each model. There are some times where the models can activate another model, which is a lot of action economy. That's part of some of the strategy that's within the game. But the idea is I use a character, you use a character, and we just keep going back and forth until we finish the game. Each one of the models has some kind of character sheet-esque card that goes with it. It tells you what kind of weapons that they have, the abilities they have, and what kind of stats they have, just like Cyberpunk Red. You got tech, you got reflex, you got melee, you got stuff like that, just like you would see in a Cyberpunk game. But above all, I love this game because it is 1 hour to 1.5 hours max. Even if you're taking your time, it's really easy to get 2 or 3 games in a really good night. And if you have a gaming store, you could run like a tournament in one day, one big escalation campaign in one day. So let's talk about the types of ways you can play the game. The most common one I think that we're going to be seeing are one-off games, and these are games where you just go one faction against another, one gang against another, and whoever wins wins, and that's it. That is a way that you could play the game for sure that doesn't bring in any of the special cards or any of the special abilities and upgrades. The idea of these one-shot games or one-off games is you just play one gang against another, and whoever wins wins, and that's it, and you go all your separate ways. The two of you agree on maximum eddies for your gang. So let's say you wanted to have a 50 eddy gang. Each one of the cards and each one of the models has their own cost, and you basically build a team according to that cost. I think 50 eddies is a good way to start the game. It's like 3 or 4 models at most. You can get the gist of how the faction works, and you can see exactly how they play on the tabletop. And then if you're comfortable, you can do a 100 eddy game. That is probably going to be the most common one-off games, where 150 being if you want to get really serious and have a longer game, then you can try 150 and get every single model that you have on the board. The second way you can play the game is called campaign play, and this is my favorite way to play the game. The idea is you take a string of games, you put them together, and it's one long form campaign where in between matches you're upgrading your guys, you're giving them new gear, you're giving them better veterancy, which makes their character sheet better. And the way that you do that is at the end of the game, there's a reward for winning the match, and whoever wins gets to promote one of their characters. When you promote one of your characters, there is another secondary card or a tertiary card that has a star or a double star on it, and this is a separate card from the character sheet that you originally have, and you get to replace it with a new one. Of course, it's a typical thing where they have better stats, better gear, etc., and it just depends exactly which character you're using to depend on the kind of upgrades they can get. The cool thing about that is you give them gear and upgrades that last until the next game, and the next game that you play in the campaign, you have a little bit of an advantage. Personally, I haven't seen the advantage to be too overpowered. It's more like just like a fun upgrade for your character, and it can certainly be powerful, but it doesn't mean that an enemy team without upgrades will automatically lose. The reason I like campaign play is because you can set a day and a time, and you're like, this is our campaign day, and the entire day you can start from a low escalation of 50 eddies, and by the end of the day you guys get to 150 eddies, and you have veterancies and gear and all kinds of cool stuff going on with your gangs. Or if you don't want to do it all in one day, you could do it in a string of days. And the cool thing about campaign play is you can hop in and out of it with your gang at any time in anybody's campaign. It doesn't mean that other players are locked out of it. And I love the idea that I could bring my gang into any game that's out there, and I don't have to worry whether I had played the first game of the campaign or not. I'm going to give you guys a list of the gangs that are available in Combat Zone. We have the Tiger Claws versus the Maelstrom in the actual box. You'll get both gangs within the box of the game. There's the Zoners. These guys are like guys that hang out in the combat zone. They got ski masks on. They're the typical bad guys that are not part of one single famous faction. You have the lawmen, the cops, you have Danger Gals, you have Generation Red. These are a bunch of kids that have cyberware, and it's an old school cyberpunk kind of thing. You have Trauma Team, you have the Bozos, you have an Arasaka Hit Team. They're like a corporate goon squad. They're really cool looking. And you, of course, have a bunch of Edge Runners. These Edge Runners are special characters that can have a gang of their own. You can have them as a party gang, you can have them as a guardian gang, or you can inject them as special mercenaries within the other gangs in the game. They're really cool. There's so many different types of Edge Runners. There's the ones that you've seen in the Cyberpunk Red Core rulebook, and then there's some crazy ones like a guy that looks like a chef. But basically each one of them has their own special abilities, and it's a great way to tactically enhance one of your gangs. So just some closing thoughts on the game. I'm sure you guys have understood really what the gist of the game is. I didn't want to go into too much detail because there's a lot of granularity within the game, but what I can tell you is my wife, with zero experience in wargaming or tabletop gaming or much gaming at all, was able to pick up the rules and have fun without any problem, and there's still enough tactics that it doesn't feel too simple of a game that someone couldn't be a tactical genius within it. And of course, this is a game where you have miniatures, you collect them, you build them, you have terrain. But if you're not into painting, you're not into building terrain, you don't have to worry about any of that. It's really easy to assemble the miniatures. They're 1 or 2 pieces each, or 3 at most, and you put them together and that's it. You could just start playing without painting the models. The terrain that comes within the box is easily accessible, it's easily put together, it clips on, it's cardboard cutouts, so you can just play a game right away, right out of the box. Not everyone is into the hobby side of things. You know, if you really are into collecting miniatures and stuff like that, there's so many things that you can do with Combat Zone and all the cool terrain that you can buy out there. You can buy Monster Fight Club terrain, you can have 3D printers over here that you see right there. You can 3D print things, and there's so many cool possibilities for the hobby that you want to get into. And of course, if you just want to give the game a try and you're really just a fan of Cyberpunk Red, well, you just did yourself a favor by buying a bunch of models that you can use in your Cyberpunk Red games and a bunch of pop-up terrain that can go with it as well. So I highly recommend it. Even if you don't really play tabletop war games, it will inject your in-person games with a lot of of goodies for your Cyberpunk Red campaigns. The only bummer is it's a very brand new game, super brand new, so there aren't a lot of content out there. If you want to learn the game, there's maybe 1 or 2 videos out there. There's some from Monster Fight Club's original YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out. But if you really want some more content, stay tuned here. I will be having live or pre-recorded battle reports. I haven't really decided yet. I'm still painting everything, but do not fear, I'm very close to painting most things and I'll be able to start playing right away. But until that time has come, stay tuned to this channel because you're going to be getting some Combat Zone stuff from me. Well, I hope this video piqued your interest and maybe you want to give it a shot. I highly recommend Combat Zone. It is definitely one of my favorite games out there. It's fun to play, easy to get into, and I really like it. So I'm excited to see how this game grows, and I'm excited to make some live content for you guys, or some content for you guys regarding this game. All right, so stay tuned, chooms. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you. Bye.